This week in the conversation, I'll be speaking with Dr. Chris Kohler. He is an impeccable writer who's written several books, who's written extensively about the Caribbean. But this time we're going to be talking about a very interesting novel. It's written titled Cracked Island. It's all about Haiti. Interesting conversation. But before we get into this conversation with Chris Kohler, I, I'm also reminding you of a new book that I have coming, a new novel titled The Cry of a Lone Bird. This one is a historical novel. It's Saint Louis du Nord, 1948. Something despicable happened um, right at the entrance of the town and down the rocky riverbed of St. Louis River. Interesting story, but if you want, I have a trailer. I can put out the link. As a matter of fact, I'll have the link at the bottom of the video so you can check out the trailer. And of course, don't forget my previous books that I never stop talking about them, at least the previous ones. The second edition of Midnight at Noon and the duo, Bittersweet. Um, so you can always check them out. Also, don't forget to check out CSMS Magazine also. Remember, the conversation is a production of CSMS Magazine. So without further ado, so let's get started with a nice conversation with Dr. Chris Kohler. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening or this morning, it depends on where you are across the world, with a very important author, an impeccable writer. I'm here with Dr. Chris Kohler, and he's written a very interesting book titled, a very interesting novel titled Cracked Island. But before we get into the story itself, as I always do in a conversation, I always ask my guest for the first time to introduce, in this case, himself in the conversation. So Chris, welcome to the conversation, and also tell the audience exactly who is Chris Kohler.
Okay. I'm Chris Kohler, and I'm the author of Cracked Island, which is something I did after retirement. Prior to that, I was professor at Southern Illinois University, and also the director of a research laboratory, all of which dealt with fish and fish ecology type projects pretty much throughout the world.
Okay, so the story itself is based in Haiti. Let me ask you this question before we get into the characters. I understand that you spent some time in Haiti. When I look at your website also, you have tons of pictures relating to an era that may sound also look from a Haitian perspective nostalgic. Some of the pictures of the downtown Port-au-Prince, the marketplace, the iron market and all that. So really, it brings a little bit the feeling of nostalgia because I dream of Haiti every night.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So what led you to first write this specific story and let the scene, the stage in Haiti for the first place? But this my second part of the question, Chris. Let me just go into the first questions. What really led you to? Was that because of your experiences, your experiences while you were in Haiti, or is that something that you have always nourished to write something about Haiti someday?
It would actually just, when I first visited Haiti, I was just overwhelmed with the entire country, the people, the whole atmosphere, and I just found it just absolutely wonderful. Just to backtrack a little bit, the first time I went to Haiti was before I finished my master's degree, which was at the University of Puerto Rico.
Oh,
And whenever I would go into my wife and I would go into a shop somewhere, there were always these Haitian carvings
in Puerto
and
Rico.
in Puerto Rico that they had been somebody shipped them over and they were selling them, and they were always pretty high priced. We thought, wow. And then we wound up meeting somebody that actually had been to Haiti, and he said, "You just have to go there. It's just amazing." So we made it a point before we left Puerto Rico, went on for my doctorate degree, that we were going to go to Haiti. And so we did. We were able to fly there very quickly from Puerto Rico. It was probably an hour flight at most. And we landed, and we made reservations in advance at one of these little, I guess you call it a bed and breakfast nowadays, but I'm not sure what they called it back then. And we just were overwhelmed with everything. We didn't speak the language. The people were just so friendly. We just wandered down to the iron market and just purchased our wood carvings that we wanted, and just looked at all the different kinds of paintings and wandered in and out of the
Yes.
streets. And
Yes.
at that time, you know, the streets were just loaded with people. And we looked around, and we were pretty much the only two that were lightly colored skin, to put it mildly. And nobody looked at us funny. Everybody just smiled, and it was
Right.
just like, we just thought it was the most friendly atmosphere
Yeah.
we had ever been in. We never once felt the least bit in danger, not like the way it would be today, unfortunately.
Right.
But back then, it was just absolutely wonderful. And so we had a wonderful trip. It was only a few days, and we left. And then it was after I had gotten my first position when I was at Southern Illinois University.
Right.
I was doing some different work in different areas, and they knew I'd been in the Caribbean. And somebody said, I knew somebody they're really looking for somebody to go to Haiti and show them how to raise fish. I said,
Ah.
I can do that. That's pretty much, one of my specialties. And I said, I know exactly what fish I wanted to work with there, and that is tilapia, because that's what I did for my master's thesis. And
Okay.
so I went to Haiti, and I worked with, was mostly church groups. And we wound up going to the outer island of La Gonâve, is the main place where I started. And I was working with a old farmer who was actually, a white person, a Caucasian, but had moved down there and was retired. And he was, I believe, if I recall correctly, from Michigan originally, and he was a farmer. And he sort of set up his own little charity group, if you want to call it that. He was doing all sorts of things. And so I kind of worked with him and kind of met lots of people and just went about, and that's what we did. And I did that for a few years, and to be going back and forth to Haiti, and met other people, and they would say, hey, you need to come over here and look at this area. So I went all over the place and got to see lots of it, and it was just striking. But the story that really got my attention was I was with a person from another university that was down there,
Right.
and he told me the story about Columbus and gold, and how Columbus went back and told, after on his first cruise, and when he got back to Spain, he told Queen Isabella all about the gold ornaments the native Indians were wearing in what was then called Hispaniola, Haiti, but was that part. And that was the reason he said, well, you got to send me back. And but when they did come back, obviously there was a second sailing, there was no gold to be found. And so for hundreds of years, until 1960,
right,
it was thought that Columbus had made up that story totally just to get another voyage out of the Queen. But there was this anthropologist, and I have his name somewhere, but I don't recall it right now, that sort of thought, you know what? I think maybe there was gold, and I think the natives probably realized that the Spaniards came back to steal their gold, and so they hid it. And I'll bet you they hid it in caves. And so he started doing his anthropology work and wandered about the islands, and sure enough, he found gold ornaments, lots of gold ornaments, millions of dollars worth of gold ornaments for the Taino Indians. And he wrote an article, and he gave all the gold back to the government because he wanted them to they said they were going to put it in a museum.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the days of Papa Doc. And
I saw
Papa
that
Doc
too.
didn't put it into the museum because he said, well, it wouldn't be safe there.
Right.
No one has ever seen a penny out of that gold. It's all disappeared. Well, we can guess where it is, but it's never left again. But there's an article published in Time magazine in
Okay.
1960 that
1960?
basically spells out that Columbus was in fact not telling a lie. Well, that story stuck in my mind. I thought,
Uh-huh.
if I ever were to write a novel, because I'm busy as a university professor at the time, as I know you are as well,
Yeah.
and I just didn't at that time. There was no way I could even think about writing a novel because I'm in the science area. Now that's not going to. I can't make an excuse for this.
Yeah.
So, the idea just kept turning in my head and turning in my head, and eventually, even while I was still an academic, I decided, you know what? I just need to take some time off and start writing. And so I started writing this story, and I sort of knew how I wanted to start, and I knew how I wanted to end. I had no idea where I was going with it, and the whole journey was just take me all the way back through Haiti and everything I had experienced, the voodoo ceremonies, you name it. I just got it written in, and I was just the whole time I just felt like I was back in Haiti, and it was just the most fun thing I really have ever done.
It's just that you had become an anthropologist at that all of a sudden.
Yes.
Let's get into the story now, because I know the story, the four main characters in the story, Team James. I
Mhm.
guess I can see probably the reflection of yourself through Team James. And then also there's a con lawyer, there's Vinnie Berkowitz. And then also there's that nurse, missionary nurse, Madeleine
Mhm.
McCoy, and then T-Bone Baptiste.
Yes.
This story revolves around three interesting, for different reasons, characters. Very intriguing, and also which in fact represents, each represent a different aspect of Haitian society. But how did you come up with this particular scenario?
Okay. Well, let me go to the attorney first.
Yeah.
I forget the name of this little hotel place I used to stay at Port-au-Prince,
Okay.
but it was owned by this guy who claimed to be an attorney, who, who was absolutely a fraud. But it was primarily what he did, though, was he took care of divorces. At that time, anybody from the United States could go down, or from anywhere in the world, really, and maybe they still can, they could go down to Haiti by themselves without their spouse and get an official divorce. And it was being upheld when they'd go back into their own country. And so there are people that were doing that. That was kind of a regular thing. And that's kind of what he was doing. If he was telling me this whole story, how he's making all this money doing this. And he in my mind was like the character when I came up with Vinnie Berkowitz there. And, I have all different names for Vinny. It goes throughout the book, but it's mostly in my mind it's just Vinny, and because that's really close to what this guy's name was. And
Uh-huh.
that was how I came up with that character. I thought, all right, I got to build somebody in like this because he's pretty hilarious. And as you said, Tim James, you could say he was probably about. I'm in my early 30s at that time when I first thinking about this story and going to Haiti. So yeah, Tim James and I are pretty much, and I'm a diver, and so I kind of use some of that as far as a character. And then Madam McCoy, though, was just somebody I totally made up. I just
Okay, I
I
was
just
going to ask
wanted
you
to
that.
have this innocent, very lovely woman that was there, all these issues that were going on,
Right.
and I just really wanted to have her be a major character in the story. And
And T-Bone
so
Baptiste.
and then T-Bone Baptiste now, I met a number of individuals, but there was one in particular when I was on La Ganave, and I have to apologize, I don't remember what his name was because in my mind he's T-Bone, but he was a worker and was doing the kinds of things that he does in the book, and had his family and everything else, and he was just a very nice person, and
Right.
I interacted with him on a number of occasions, and it was always a smile. But it was just a very interesting person to
Uh-huh.
be around. And I
Uh-huh.
thought, this is the kind of character. I'd never really met his family, but
Hmm.
there were times when I did meet people's families, and their little kids would run up to me and rub their hands up down my arms because they liked furry, the feeling of the fur, or the hair on my arms, and that was kind of a unique thing. I'm, that the kids would all do that, and they were just thought that was so interesting. And of course, when they would see me, for a lot of them, I was probably the first Caucasian they'd ever seen. And so it's just kind of, you felt like you're in Africa, for me, it's like, man, this is, how could it be any different? This is where I am. It's just, I'm in the Caribbean, but I feel like I'm somewhere else in the world. And
Did you have did you get the feeling, Chris, while you were in Haiti, someone had become sort of a Pan-Africanist?
now, how do you mean? What do you mean by that? I'm not sure what.
Pan-Africanism, just like people who tend, because Haiti historically, uh, uh, I would say they some historian even claimed that Haiti is the birthplace of Pan-Africanism.
Yeah,
Back in
well,
1900, the first black intellectuals they gathered in London, you know, to create these. But many, especially Americans who travel to Haiti, intellectual like you, they tend to fall in love. But I get the feeling it's always the African aspect of Haiti that
yes,
drives people into the
yes,
country.
it is. It
I
is.
see.
It really is. And I would always say I felt as if I was in Africa, and it was not very far away, and it was just and some of the villages, and I bring that into my story, but some of the villages where I go through, and some are different, construction. They had these mud huts, but sometimes they're this shape, sometimes they're some other total shape. And then I learned, from talking to different people and all of that, about the history of that and how different parts of Africa they brought in. The French would bring in different parts of the world,
Right.
so that they spoke different languages because they didn't want
Exactly.
them all to gel together. They purposely
Yes.
did that, and but that's still there today. You can
Uh,
in different areas, and it's still very unique.
and speaking on shape of, you make reference to an adobe, which is the home that T. Bon Baptiste, the kind of
Yes,
home that he lives with his wife and children. I like the way also in this particular chapter, I think it was chapter 3 on page 13, where you introduce when they're planning to drop off the packages and his wife wasn't home, and he wanted to make sure that no one was watching before he grabbed this thing and get inside the house with it and all that. I can see you describing this thing. Yeah, that's kind of very interesting the way you describe it. But you know what? On page 8 and the second paragraph, you also say Haiti perception is reality, and this is so true.
hmm
Is that something that you observed while you were there?
yes, I just observed it, and yes, I would say that's something that just sort of became very evident.
Hmm. And also making reference to Team James, you say that Haiti may be a hellhole for peasants, but for the rich within the ranks, he soon joined. We're talking about him.
hmm
The island provided a life of splendor. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the way it is in Haiti.
Yes.
The vast majority of the population wallow in poverty every day,
Yes.
whereas a tiny, small, portion, unrepresentative of the country itself, they control more than 70% of the country's wealth. This
Mm.
is pretty cool.
Yes, it
And you
is.
capture that very well in the
Thank
novel.
you.
Yes. So my question for you, after this novel, Chris, do you have any other novel in the work or something you want to give us
No, I have one that is going to be published hopefully this year.
this year?
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah, in fact, I just finished this afternoon working on the second round of proofs on it, so it's that close.
Okay, but it's going to be in an entirely different subject, right?
Yes, well, a different subject, but still in the Caribbean, and because I've done lots of work in other islands in the Caribbean, so this one takes place in the Virgin Islands, both the
Okay.
U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, and I bring into that one the Rastafarians because there's lots of them
Oh,
there. So I don't know what it is about these different religions, whether it's the African religions and so forth, but they just sort of enthrall me. So I did a lot of studying up on the Rastafarian faith, and was actually very shocked to learn a lot of things about Rastafarians that I had no idea.
mm,
I knew a little bit about Haile Selassie and how, but I didn't know the whole extent
okay.
that that he was the 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 dark Jesus, if you want to,
Right,
and
right.
so and the way they worshipped him and how that was all. So I bring a lot of that into the book, and so in that book I have a Rastafarian and his young son, who's not yet a Rastafarian, but he's soon to be what they call a newbie, and it was become
Yeah,
one.
right,
But
right.
he's sort of a character that I like bring into it. And then
Mhm.
I've also got a Jimmy Buffett type of character that I've got built in.
Really?
Oh
Within the
yeah,
same novel?
oh yeah, the same novel. And he's a pilot, and for a small, those single engine
I know, I
land
know.
on the water.
Uh,
And I've got and what it is, it starts off with this young couple. They're both Caucasians, and they're very young. They've been married for 5 years, and their husband's been starting a business, and they never really had a true honeymoon. And they're finally things are starting to the point where they decide they can afford to take a vacation. So they
okay.
take a vacation to go to St. John, and they on one of the things they do they take a inflatable boat out to one of the little outer islands, which are called Keys. There, but
Hmm.
it's spelled like Cay rather than Key.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this one's called Whistling Key. And Whistler Key is a very interesting island. I've been there, and it's got an old rune on it. And that rune was when the slaves on St. John
Hmm.
got their freedom,
Hmm.
pretty much way back about the same time, probably,
Hmm.
not as maybe as soon as the Haitians did, but soon thereafter.
Right.
And they would slip out and get to that little building that was there, where they call it the Custom House, and then they get over to the British Virgin Islands where they could get their full freedom. And so I kind of bring that into the story. And so there's lots of little historical things like that. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I never used to think that way, but now when I start to write, I always want to bring in the culture and the history behind what you're seeing. It's just
Hmm.
not beauty. It's not just the characters. But I always kind of want to. I guess it's the educator in me. I wanted to learn, and then I want who reads my books to learn these things as well, and to get a little historical perspective about. In this case, it was the Danes that had the slaves
Hmm.
in St. John. And you never really think of Denmark and slavery in the same
Right.
sentence, but
Right.
Caribbean, it's all over like that way. It's
Right. Right.
there's
Hmm.
very few countries that didn't have slaves at some point in time, and so they've all have that.
Oh, wow.
But it's interesting in terms of the stories and all that. So anyway, so this couple, they go to the Whistling Key, and what happens? She finds a gold doubloon
Really?
right on the water's edge,
Really?
and so they decide to go back another day and look, and sure enough, they find a
Uh-huh.
lot more gold, in the water.
Wow.
And they had no idea what the doubloons were worth. And they go see this guy, another character like my Vinny.
The
He's a storekeeper,
boogeyman. Hmm.
and he does exactly what it is. And he says, I can probably get you $10,000 for the one. They tell him they just have one coin, but they actually have a couple hundred, and but they don't want him to know that. And they thought it would be worth a few $100s, not $10,000 each. And that's when they realized they were rich. And so the story looks like that's all going well. And this is all happened pretty fast. And before you know it, The husband disappears, as does all the gold. There
Yeah.
she is.
There's
Wondering
always an
what's
element of
going on.
intrigue in your stories. Yeah.
And that's where the story takes off.
Now, let me ask you something. Let's go back to Haiti again.
Yes,
Now,
please.
with the years that you spent in Haiti, is there any particular element of the Haitian cuisine that you have become accustomed to?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Because
Yeah.
to be honest with you, you have to be very careful when you're coming in and you're not just eating the foods. So
Yeah.
my main concern when I got there was not getting sick. Because
Okay.
I'm afraid I got sick just about every time I went to Haiti. And
Really?
yeah, I would go to the different, it was mostly because the water wasn't safe to drink. They would tell you, even with the shower, don't make sure you don't let any of the water go in your mouth. And
Mhm.
that's when you realize, wait a minute, I always got my mouth open when I take a shower. Now I'm sitting there gritting your teeth and taking a shower, and so things weren't very sanitized. And
There
so
were places where you could buy those treated waters like
yes,
still
and that's what
waters.
you had to
I
learn
think
to
they call
do.
the gain or something that you get the
That's,
big
yeah,
jar
and
of water. Is that why when you go to the provinces, that's what you carried with you?
I would take sure of my own bottle of water.
Mm.
If I was going to be in a restaurant, I wanted a bottle of beer or a Coke that was already capped, and then I opened it myself, and everything was always fine. But it was that was the one downside, but I got pretty good at it,
Okay.
but but usually there was a little stomach problem on the way home. So so anyway, as far as the cuisine goes, I did get to experience it probably to the extent that I would have liked to.
Mm.
But I certainly saw it all in all the little shops and just the different areas. It was just and it was just amazing everything, as far as whether it was these little outdoor restaurants. I don't even know what you'd call those, but they had those. I knew better than to get something there, but it was always fun to sort of wander in and look at everything and just see what people were eating. And then, of course, there was always the other stories and too of other things that might be going on in terms of what you didn't want to eat that were that was happening. But I mostly just sort of stuck to what I was doing and wound up working on fish and if we could catch some of our own fish, those were good to eat.
So, since we're getting to the end of the conversation, I just want to ask you one last question. Is there any way that you can but anyway, I'm just showing the book to the audience so you could see it. If you are interested in purchasing a copy, it's available everywhere they sell books, including Walmart. So go get it. You won't regret it. And especially those of you who really who always tell me that you love my writing and it's always about Haiti. And this book, Haiti is all over it. So go get a copy to savor this wonderful story by Dr. Chris Kohler. Chris, it's been such an amazing moment. It's been it's such a pleasure to have you for the first time in the conversation. But I'm quite sure when the next book is published, we're going to sit down again and have another one, right?
Okay, that would be
Promise?
very nice.
Promise, right?
I'll get a copy off to you as soon as I have one.
Okay. Thank
Oh,
you.
and lastly, I'd like to just say, if you want to just get an ebook, Barnes and Noble. Just look at Chris
Exactly.
Kohler, Cracked Island. It's $1.99, so
Exactly.
you can't beat it.
Exactly. Or, if you want to be old fashioned just like me, get a
Yep,
hard copy of the book so you can have it in your library.
right.
All right, it's been such a pleasure. So we'll talk soon again, Chris.
Okay, it was nice talking to you.